All right, I think I'm live here. I hope I am coming through all right. So I wanted to do this. I hope I'm coming through all right. Am I? Yeah, I got an echo. Why have I got an echo? Okay, here we go. Believe I've got it now. So I wanted to do this live stream to celebrate finally reaching the milestone of 100 subscribers for my channel. I made that last weekend, and I wanted to thank everyone, first of all, who helped make that possible by watching the channel and supporting it and subscribing. And what I wanted to do with this live stream is just kind of discuss some current topics, nothing too in depth, but there are a number of things I thought that I could cover. One of the first things I wanted to talk about was the recent move by several comic book creators to Substack, the Substack platform. So the first one that really caught attention was James Tynion, who is the current writer for Batman. And he has announced he's going to be leaving, well, not necessarily leaving DC, but he's going to be moving over to Substack, and he's not going to be exclusive to DC anymore. Although I think he is going to have some involvement over there still. And he's going to be doing several of his own independent books over there. And of course, it's a big shift. He's no longer going to be working for a company. He's going to be working for himself. And so are all the other artists over there. Basically, they're going to be betting on themselves because they're going to have to put out content on their own now without any assistance from a publisher. And it reminds me in some ways of the big move by a lot of top artists back in the 90s when Todd McFarlane and hey, Ambassador, thanks for being here, man. Thanks for stopping by. And I think that Todd McFarlane was one, Jim Lee was another, Rob Liefeld was another, and oh, by the way, Ambassador, if you want, I can shoot you a link and you can hop in here if you would like. Just let me know. And of course, when they first moved over to Image, they made a big splash initially, but then they had huge sales right out of the gate. But they encountered a problem, which is once they were on their own and really not working for another company, and they didn't have editors after them to get books out on time. Now suddenly they had a problem getting their books out on a regular schedule. Books started being late. Some books would get delayed. Some of them would get canceled. Some stuff just never came out at all. And as time passed, that really began to impact their sales. And although they were still solid for a pretty good while, it eventually did the company in. And I have a feeling that's what you're going to see happen here with these artists that are going over to Substack now. Not necessarily artists, it's actually more writers that are going now. And in a way, it's easier for writers maybe to get their work done than it is, it takes less time maybe to write a comic than it does to draw one, presumably if you're a decent writer, but still they're probably going to wind up looking at getting things late too, and then that's going to make the artist late and you wind up with the same issue. Okay, yeah, I'll do that, Ambassador. Okay, hold on, let me see here. You know what I might do? I think it might be easier for me if I don't know. I may just dump it in the chat here. That might be the easiest thing. Can I do that? There. Yeah, I just put it there in the chat. I think that's going to be the easiest thing to do. This is my first live stream, so I'm kind of feeling my way here. And let me see. Okay. And I think that it's going to be a real issue for these comic creators over in Substack going forward. Are they going to be able to meet deadlines? Are they going to be able to keep their subscribers happy? Because that's how they're going to get paid now. They're going to have people subscribing to their service, and they're going to be expecting, monthly content. And if they start having issues with getting it out in time, it's probably going to hurt them. And because these days, I think people are a lot more impatient and they expect a lot more. Just they're not going to be as patient for inconvenience now as they used to be. So I think people will be even quicker to maybe drop their subscriptions than they would have been, say, back in the 90s. And I think that could really come back to hurt them in the long run. So while I think they're going to see strong sales initially, I really do question whether in the long run they're going to be able to maintain this sort of thing. Because it's the thing with Image is they they had real problems getting stuff out on time. I remember one of the things they were doing at Image was there was a mini series they published called 1963, which was actually written by Alan Moore, and I forget the artist, but it was a 6-issue mini series that was a kind of homage to Silver Age comics, particularly to Silver Age Marvel. Each issue featured a different character or group of characters, and each character was sort of uh, a different pastiche of a popular Marvel character. And they had one like a Fantastic Four character or Fantastic Four group. They had what else? They had a Hulk character. They had a Thor character, and I really wonder if that's going to wind up impacting them. Oh, hey, Mountains! Thank you for stopping by. Okay, so let me see now. If we get the link into the chat there. There we go. I think that's it. Okay, so yeah, if you can hear me, Ambassador, I have the link up in the B5 thread now. Okay, so anyway, yeah, so they had a group of Fantastic Four type characters. They had a Hulk character, Spider-Man character, Thor, a couple of others. And it in the final issue, all these characters wind up jumping up into the future to the modern day. And it ended on kind of a cliffhanger, and it was supposed to be continued in this 1963 annual where they were going to meet all the modern Image characters like Spawn and Youngblood and all that. Never happened. The thing never got published. And that wasn't the only project they had that wound up being delayed indefinitely, or simply just, wasn't even delayed. They just forgot about it and it never came out. Another good example of them having difficulty getting material out on time was the Deathmate crossover series, if anyone remembers that. So in the mid 90s, Image and Valiant Comics, which was okay, Ambassador. Okay, I'll see you. I'll see you when I see you, I guess. And they did a crossover with Valiant Comics, which was the other kind of hot new company at the time. And it really the difference between the two companies was really glaring because Valiant got, yeah, because it was a 4-issue miniseries and Image did 2 issues and Valiant did 2 issues. And Valiant's books came out on time. Hey, Keely Chow. How are you? Thanks for stopping by. So, welcome to the stream here. This is my, well, first stream, really. I've just hit 100 subscribers, so I'm kind of doing this to celebrate. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. And uh, so Valiant was able to get their 2 issues of Death Made Out on time. But Image, their issues wound up being delayed. The first one they did was delayed by like a month or two. It was like a month, I think. But the other one was delayed for like several months. It came out very, very late. It was just kind of ridiculous. I remember at the time, me and my friends thinking that, what a great pairing it would be if you could take the writers for Valiant and put them together with the artists from Image, because Image had great art, but they didn't really have the greatest stories. Their characters, I mean, they weren't bad, but most of their characters were they all tended to feel like X-Men groups. And they were all like X-Men type characters, or they were all kind of like violent anti-hero type characters. There was kind of a sameness to them. And their storytelling, as far as writing and whatnot, again, wasn't terrible, wasn't the best either. On the other hand, Valiant had great characters, particularly really good villains, but they did not have the best artists in the world, particularly after they had grown beyond about 10 or so issues. Their artists really tended to start having a sameness to them. There was clearly a house style that they were promoting, and it gave a kind of blandness to all their books. And while it was interesting to read their stories. The stories were good, the characters were good, the villains were good, but again, the art tended to be kind of dull, for lack of a better term. And so I always thought that Image and Valiant together would be kind of a good thing, but it turned out that it doesn't work that well because Image can't get their work done on time, or at least they couldn't back then. Okay, so what do we got here? Okay. So, having covered that, I want to talk a second about the recent performance by superhero films at the box office. Because as we've seen this year, we got the first, I guess it was Black Widow, wasn't it? Was the first real superhero movie that came out this year. But it had a big opening on that first weekend, did really well on streaming, but then it kind of tanked in the second week, and it really just tailed off very quickly. And it's winding up being something of a disappointment. And of course, it's a bit of a surprise because before the pandemic and all this other madness happened, Marvel was pretty much the most reliable ticket in town as far as the box office was concerned. They really hadn't had an outright flop. They had had a couple that had been kind of disappointing, like the Hulk, and honestly, the first Captain America movie didn't do that well. It did well here in the States, I think, but overseas it was pretty much a complete flop. But after that, they had pretty much done really well, very reliably, even with characters that you wouldn't have expected them to succeed with, like Ant-Man or Guardians of the Galaxy, for example. But Black Widow, which is actually a pretty popular character for them, did not do well. A bit of a surprise. Of course, some of that was probably impacted by the option or the move they had to make it available on streaming as well. I'm sure that drained the box office numbers to a degree. But the Black Widow film isn't the only one that's actually been a box office disappointment. So we got the Suicide Squad recently, and that was actually a bit of a disappointment as well. Excuse me. And I think that the reason for that may be something different. Obviously, COVID is keeping people away, but I think in the case of the Suicide Squad, I'm afraid that the DC brand is really maybe just too damaged at this point. Warner Brothers has put out, I mean, how many DC films have they put out here in the last, I don't know, when did Man of Steel come out? That was like 2012, wasn't it? So we're getting close to a decade now. And that's not even including, say, Green Lantern. But if you go back to Man of Steel and go forward, I mean, how many movies they put out? I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but I think it's been easily over a dozen. And out of those, how many of them have been actual outright successes? Oh, okay. Here's Ambassador. I see Ambassador. Hello there.
Hey, old friend. Good to see you. Been a long time.
Thank you for coming by.
You're welcome. And hey, congratulations. Like I said earlier, very well, very much deserved. So,
Thank you.
um, you're welcome. And we miss you over at the council, but we know you've been busy. So, but your place is still
Yeah,
there whenever you're ready to come back to it.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started a bachelor's degree program back in the spring,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kept me busy. But I actually had a death in my family about a
Oh,
month ago, which was
okay.
very unexpected, and and that fell like right before my finals and everything. So I was dealing with that too,
Well,
and
my
so
condolences.
the thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's I'm not gonna lie, it's been rough,
I can imagine.
and yeah, and anyway, and because of that, my personal responsibilities have increased some as well.
I can
I
imagine.
had thought, because my classes ended earlier this month, and I thought I was going to get a couple of weeks, and I had thought to maybe
Mm-hmm.
shoot you a message and say, hey, maybe I can come on for a week or two. But
Sure.
actually, I'm only getting, oh, basically, this is my week off. And then
I
classes start
know.
up in earnest next week.
I
Uh,
know that grind, dude. So, and hey, we understand. And like I said, your spot is not going to go anywhere. It will be there when you get back. So you
oh,
do
thank
not
you.
have to worry. Yeah, of course. And hey, I heard you talking about DC, talking about the DC films. Um, go ahead and continue your thought, and then I'll chime in with my 2 cents. So,
Okay. So my thought as far as uh, DC films is my concern is that part of the reason, well, I think part of the reason that Suicide Squad didn't do well is because I think honestly there really wasn't that much demand for it. You know, the first film did not do well. It wasn't a flop, but it was not a great success either. And I just don't know that was really all that much demand for a sequel anyway. But beyond that, I think that oh, and another thing I wonder is if people aren't maybe a little tired of Harley Quinn, because this is the third movie she's been in, and this
mhm.
one and the one before that, Birds of Prey, both not done well. So I think that might be part of it. But I think the main concern is just that DC. What year did Man of Steel come out? That was 2012, wasn't it?
No, actually, it was 2013.
Was it 2013? Okay.
Pretty sure it
So,
was 2013 when Man of Steel came out because I was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 2012 or 2013 when Man of Steel came out because I went with a group of friends from my church to see that in theater, and we actually really enjoyed it. I did a review of, and I did a watch party for Man of Steel a few months ago. I also did one for BVS Ultimate Edition. Um, I think you bring up a very valid point because here's the thing. I did enjoy the new Suicide Squad. I did my own review of it and so on. But you make a valid point, except for people that are like really hardcore into DC, and I'm for you probably know this. I'm primarily a Marvel fan, but I do enjoy certain properties within the DC universe.
uh-huh.
But there I was on a stream not too long ago. It was actually just a few days ago where somebody made a comment in the chat saying, "Why hasn't anybody really done any further discussion of Suicide Squad?" And several of us on the panel made the comment, "Well, there really isn't a whole lot in that movie to discuss. It's not a bad movie, as you said, but there's not a whole lot to dig into there. I mean, you can talk about the relationship between Bloodsport and Ratcatcher 2. You can talk about Polka Dot Man and so on. And you can talk about Harley Quinn. And I think there is some credence to what you said about her as the character of Harley Quinn. She is a very interesting character. There are a lot of fans of that particular character, but you can get an oversaturation with a character. And if you can, as you said, if you get too many films, even if it's a solo film or an ensemble film, people are going to get burnt out. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
let's be honest here. Harley Quinn as a character, up until just recently, hadn't really been that relevant of a character within the comic book sphere, in particular with DC. I mean, I imagine she had been in a few series of comics and so on, and she may have had her own series for a while. But she was a character that was primarily created for the Batman animated series from the 1990s, and
Right.
she was very much a character that a lot of people who watch that series, myself included, really enjoyed as the Joker's hench girl. But what they've tried to do and what they kind of fumbled and failed with in terms of, and this is what I've heard from a lot of people who are DC fans themselves or just have seen the Birds of Prey movie. It was very badly mismanaged. The story wasn't particularly good, and that's why it flopped.
Right. But I think even beyond that film, I
Mhm.
think the real issue here is, again, if you go back to Man of Steel, which what we're talking 8 years ago now, how many movies
Roughly.
have they done since then? I mean, it's got to be getting close to around a dozen,
Well, let's see. Okay.
because you got Man of Steel,
You've got
then
Man of Steel.
Batman
You've
versus
got,
Superman, Suicide
yeah,
Squad, the first one,
yeah,
Justice
yeah,
League. Then
yeah.
we had Wonder Woman,
Wonder Woman 80.
Aquaman,
Yeah.
then
You had Wonder Woman 84. You've had the Snyder cut. I'm trying to
Shazam,
think. Yeah, you had
Joker,
Shazam. Yes,
Wonder Woman
and
2,
yeah, in 1980,
uh,
1984,
Birds of
and
Prey. So yeah, we're getting
yeah,
up around a dozen movies now. And out of those movies, how many have really been runaway hits? Really, it's been Wonder Woman, the first one,
mhm,
Aquaman, and Joker. And
yeah.
the
Now
rest
the
have
other,
been either disappointments or they've been outright flops. And I'm afraid the brand is really just damaged at this point. And I think there's just not that
yeah.
much enthusiasm out there for them anymore, because they presume DC movies are probably going to suck.
Well, and here's the problem, and it has to do with the upper management and the leadership over at DC Studios or whatever it's called and Warner Brothers.
Yeah, right. Warner
Every
Brothers.
time, one of their biggest problems, and this is something that a lot of fellow YouTubers, people that know that particular side of the business better than I do, have said every time there's a little bit of an issue with a DC property film or TV show, they do a massive course correct. They panic, they slam on the brakes, and they're like, okay, we're going to go in a completely different direction instead of staying the course. The biggest problem with DC, and here's the thing. There have been certain DC movies that I did enjoy. I mean, I was like, I watched Joker, I've watched Aquaman, I've watched Shazam. I have them all on Blu-ray, for heaven's sake. Um, but they were all films that I really enjoyed. I mean, I got um Man of Steel, and I've also got BVS the Ultimate Edition, both on Blu-ray. I enjoyed both of those. Do I recognize there's probably some issues with it with all these films? Of course there is. But you sit down, watch them, and you know what? If you're entertained, great, you're entertained. And for me, I watch movies primarily to be entertained. I will do like deep dives on them on occasion if it's something that really sparks my interest. But I am first and foremost simply a fan. I can be a critic if I feel that is warranted, but The biggest issue is obviously, then this is the elephant in the room for those of us who are comic book fans. Marvel right now, Marvel is, whether you like it or hate it, and there's a very large vocal majority that loves it. Hi, that is pumping on all cylinders. Now we've had, would like to think, at least from my perspective, three very well received limited run streaming series, and we've got a fourth now that's a animated anthology. And you got the next batch of movies that are getting ready to kick into release with Shang-Chi, with the Eternals, with Spider-Man No Way Home, and then going into next year, you've got Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and just so on. And I think the biggest thing that Marvel did after Endgame is they took time off. They did nothing. They were in production or post production with a lot of these shows and series and movies that they had been working on. And they wanted to give the fan base and the general public a break. And I think that was very smart. But with DC, they don't seem to have a plan. And to quote one of my all-time favorite movies, and I'm sure one of yours, it's all part of the plan.
Yeah, Warner Brothers does not seem to have a plan. They don't seem to really be sure what they're doing. Now, obviously, that's a big difference compared to
Mm-hmm.
Marvel, who clearly do have a very clear-cut plan and which they're
Mm-hmm.
following. Now, I don't have Disney Plus, so I haven't watched the streaming shows. But
That's fair.
I saw Black Widow,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was okay. I didn't love it. I thought
That's
that
what.
the I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I thought the the way that scene at the end when she breaks her nose and so that she quote unquote severs her olfactory nerve so she can't smell was ridiculous because
Mhm.
I mean breaking your nose necessarily won't sever your nerve. And okay, it could. The thing is, if you do that, it's not like you can then fix the nose and then the nerve is good again. Nerves don't
Right.
heal that way. And so
Yeah.
I don't know. I found it kind of silly. Um, and there were some other issues, but they were minor. What did you think of it?
Well, actually, I have not had a chance to see Black Widow. Um,
Oh, okay.
we've been we've been busy. I've had a lot, like you. I've had a lot going on in my personal life with my mother, my wife, myself, so on, and we just haven't had a chance to either check it out on Disney Plus, because we do have Disney Plus, or get out to the theater to see it. The last movie we got to see in theater, both me and Madam Ambassador, was, well, this one behind me. I know you've got me kind of scrunched, but it was Corella. And but as far as Black Widow, I've heard it's good. I've heard it's not, like you said, it's not the greatest thing ever, but I am interested to see it. I will probably either will pay the premium access, or if we both feel up to going out, we'll go check it out in the theater. I know Madam Ambassador probably wants to, and I know I certainly do. But if that's just not an option, and we have the means, which we probably will, we'll pony up the $30 and we'll watch it on Disney Plus, or we'll just wait for it to come out of its 45-day window off of premium access and just watch it on our normal subscription.
Yeah, I
So
just wait, wait and see it on the normal subscription, so you don't have to pay extra.
yeah,
It's
but
probably getting close to that anyway.
let's see, it came out in what, late July, I think.
Early July. It was like July 8th, I think.
Oh, early July. Okay, early July. All right.
So it's been
Well, yeah,
about a
it
month and
should
a half.
be. Yeah, so it should be within the next month or so, which, hey, would be good because next month's my birthday. Watch it then. I mean, Corella is supposed to be. Sorry, I sometimes get my hands mixed up. Corella is supposed to be coming out of its 4 to 5 day window in the near future as well. And I'll tell you, I went twice to the theaters, once by myself and once with Mam Ambassador to see Corella. And I really enjoyed it. I know some people were like, "Why the hell are they doing this movie?" And I'm like, I just want to go see it, see what it's all about. And I thought Emma Stone was out of this park, knocked it out of the park with her performance. I thought it was actually really good. I mean, they breathed life into this old, seemingly dead property from the early days of Disney, and they create a really interesting story and a really interesting world. But I don't want to sidetrack from the comic discussion because, well, that's your thing. But it simply comes down to the fact that Disney has enough confidence in Feige and the others over at Marvel Studios to just let them run the show the way they feel that needs to be run and not interfere a whole bunch. I mean, they might come in and give a few recommendations or ask a few things or say, hey, we kind of want this done. Can you do it? And if it's within reason, Feige and his bunch, they do it. But with DC and with Warner Brothers, there's no synergy there. There's no give and take.
Right.
There's no organic flow that really allows for the creative process to really thrive and flourish. Now, I will say this: having not seen the first Suicide Squad that David Ayer did and that got all butchered all to hell, um, I don't have a basis, but I will say I did enjoy this Suicide Squad, the one that James Gunn did, and honestly, I went in not knowing a single thing about any of the characters in this movie, but I went in on the name recognition for James Gunn because I know James Gunn's reputation as a director. He does good films. I mean, you look at Guardians Volumes 1 and 2. They're good films. I know he's done other stuff in his career as well, and I've enjoyed it also. So for me, it wasn't so much, oh, it's a DC movie. I like these characters. I'm interested. I'm like, what's James Gunn gonna do next? That was my theory. That was my um, motivation because this was obviously an R-rated film,
Yeah.
and he's not really, it's been a very long time since he's done an R-rated film and everything. I mean, because Marvel obviously doesn't do R-rated. I mean, they potentially could down the road if it's warranted, but for like the main MCU, they're the highest rating you're going to get is a PG-13 out of them.
Right.
But I did like what Gunn did with these characters and what he did with this movie, and this for me was James Gunn returning to the genre that really launched his career. But that's my
Yeah,
two
he did
cents.
a lot of schlocky horror movies early in his career. Of course, a lot of directors do. So did Peter Jackson. That's how he got started too.
Yeah, I remember there was one in particular, if I remember correctly, it was called Slither. It
Yeah.
actually had Michael Rooker in it. I'm like, I finally, it finally clicked with me. This makes sense why Michael Rooker has been in every one of Gunn's films because he was in one of his earliest films, Slither. They also had, I believe, Nathan Fillion in it. And it was one of the grossest but yet funniest movies I had seen in a very long time. I will not lie. And it wasn't really based on anything. It was, you could say, it was kind of paying homage to the science fiction B movies of like the 1950s or 60s. But aside from that, it was a different idea and everything. But it introduced the world to James Gunn and his very unique sense of humor, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed the his Suicide Squad film too. You know, my review of it, I said, you know, that was an entertaining film. It's kind of fun. I liked
Mm-hmm.
that he leaned really hard into the DC lore. You know, he didn't kind of
Yes.
shy away from it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely not a movie that is for all tastes, as you notice, as you kind of
No.
touched on. It
Mm-hmm.
was pretty gory. Definitely not like a family film or a kid's film. So not for
No.
people who have weak stomachs.
No. Definitely not. But the thing I said was this movie was, obviously it's about all of these villains coming to being press ganged essentially to take on Starro. But I think what it ultimately came down to, and this is something that Gunn has been able to do very well, at least with the comic book movies that he's put out. It's about the less than conventional sense of family or community. And if you think about this particular iteration of Suicide Squad, it's very much in that same vein. This is not your atypical group of of characters. These are people who are damaged. These are people who have done bad things to one degree or another, but they kind of come together, and or they do come together to achieve this goal. And also in some ways they found something that they had been missing, and that was a sense of belonging and a sense of community. And that, I think, is something that speaks to everyone.
Yeah, and it's I think that kind of theme has a strong appeal. I know it's one that I like. I've
Yes.
seen it, that kind of story being told in
Mhm.
other properties. So, have you been keeping track of the whole lawsuit that Scarlett Johansson's filed against Disney?
I had heard about it initially, but I haven't heard anything further about it. I didn't know if it was still going on or if it had been settled or whatever the case may be. Um,
Yeah, last I heard, I think is they were in some kind of arbitration, and
mhm.
Disney is wanting to take it out of the public eye, where basically
Yeah.
information won't be publicly available, and so everyone can look at Variety or Hollywood Reporter and see what's going on.
Mhm.
Why Disney would want to keep things out of public view. I don't know. I'm assuming because of the numbers, the money that is involved, but I don't really know. So, what prospects do you think that other Marvel films are going to have going forward? Shang-Chi is coming up here.
Yeah, Shang-Chi. Um, Honestly, I am a martial arts fan. I love martial arts movies. I have ever since I was a kid. So for me, this is a marrying of two things that I love. Obviously, comic book movies, which I do enjoy immensely, and martial arts films. And it also does include some mythology and mysticism and so on, which I think in this particular genre has its place. So I think it's going to be profitable. I think it's going to be, if the early reviews from the critics are any indication, I think this movie will do well. Do I think it's going to like break the box office? No, because I am a realist. I understand that we are dealing with another variant of the COVID virus and so on. So people are going to be a little skittish, and I understand that myself. I live in Indiana, which is by and large, as I understand it, we're not in the red across the board. There are a few counties that are, but I'm vaccinated. The missus is, the family is. So when the opportunity arises, we'll probably go to the theater to see it. Because not to mention next month is my birthday. As far as the Eternals, now the Eternals, I did actually did a stream last night where I talked a little bit about the Eternals and also Spider-Man No Way Home. These are two. I mean, Spider-Man. Spider-Man is Spider-Man. He's always going to be a draw. He's always going to his movies are
Right.
always going to do well. And I think I think Tom Holland honestly gets a lot of undue hate, and I don't quite understand why. But it is what it is. People just want to be bitter and hateful. So you know what? Let them. I think No Way Home is actually, I think, also will be relatively well received, if not very well received, because, and also with Eternals, this is a group of characters that are relatively obscure in the Marvel universe. You have to be like a really hardcore fan to know who the Eternals are, know their history, and so on.
Right.
I've done my research on them. They are a team that I am very interested to see be brought to the big screen. Now, I don't know if I'll have the opportunity to see it in theaters. If I have to, I'll wait for it to clear its 45-day window on Disney Plus. But if I do have the opportunity to see it in the theaters, I definitely will. The big thing for me with these three films, and I'll also speak to Venom 2 Let There Be Carnage, which I'm definitely enthusiastic for, and I'm really hoping Sony does not delay it, because I want to see this film, even though I haven't seen the first one. I'm going to rectify that in the near future because the cast for this film alone, in terms of Let There Be Carnage, that's the draw for me. I mean, you've got Tom Hardy, you've got Woody Harrelson. These are two very well respected actors. They've done good work in their careers. And I think they were somewhat surprising castings for these two roles, but I think that they are the right picks for these characters for the story that they're wanting to tell.
Yeah, I think
So
the movie, I think Carnage is pretty well cast. Um,
yeah,
it, Tom Hardy, he really made the first Venom movie watchable, in my
that's what
opinion.
I've heard.
It's without him, I think it would have been a fairly lackluster film, but he
Yeah.
actually does make it a pretty solid film just with his performance.
Well, and and that's the thing that a good actor can do. They can take a so-so film and turn it into something really special. And Tom Hardy, he has a good reputation as an actor. I mean, he's done a lot of good work. If you look at it just in terms of the comic book movie genre of films, I know this is something that people are give him grief for, but I thought his performance as Bane, including the voice, that was a screen accurate, realistic Bane, and it worked. And Tom Hardy made it work along with Christopher Nolan, and I forget exactly who wrote the script for it. But Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock, from what I've understood, and I take your I accept your opinion as a strong opinion and one that I respect, obviously. Tom Hardy, I think, for Eddie Brock, for this particular version of Eddie Brock minus Spider Man, is going to work or has worked. And now you're adding in one of the Spider Verse's most iconic villains or characters, and that's, of course, Carnage. Cletus Cassidy, played by Woody Harrelson. And let's be honest, Woody Harrelson knows how to play crazy.
Yeah, yeah, he
If
does.
you look if you look at, well, just for instance, Natural Born Killers, he plays crazy really good in that film.
Right.
If you look at, and this character is not necessarily so much crazy, but he's a little askew or very askew. Hamish Abernathy from the Hunger Games films, Harrelson in that he was also very good. I would say he was actually one of the bright spots of those films. So when they announced that Woody Harrelson was going to be cast as Cletus Cassidy, aka Carnage, I was like, yeah, I think that was a good pick for them.
He's aging very well too, because he's got to be pushing what, probably pushing 60 at this point, isn't he?
Um, Give me a minute, I'll tell you. Let's see. Come on. Here he
And
is.
they've pushed Venom back again, I believe. Haven't they delayed it again?
There have been talks that they were going to, but nothing has been set in stone as of yet. Okay, he was born July 23rd, 1961. He is actually 60.
Wow. Yeah, so I mean, he's aging very well.
Mhm.
For a 60-year-old, he looks pretty good.
Yeah,
I guess
and
it's
he's
all
still
that weed he smokes.
well. Let's see. He's been married twice. Current spouse is Laura Louie. And they were married in 2008. Then he was married to a Nancy Simon from 1985 to 1986. He's got four kids: Zoe Harrelson, Mankini Ravello Harrison, and Danny Montana Harrelson. And he's actually got I think it's either two brothers or a brother and a sister, a Brett Harrelson and a Jordan Harrison, or Harrelson, excuse me.
Hmm.
So there's the skinny Woody Harrelson.
So now is Shang-Chi, is that going to be available on Disney Plus? I don't think it is, right? Isn't that just straight to box
I
office?
I'm not entirely sure. It might be. Let me find. Give me a minute. I'll find out.
Because the thing with Shang-Chi and also with Eternals is, as far as I understand, those films are not going to be released in China. And China's been a big
Yeah,
market for them. And I
yeah.
think if they can't get them into theaters in China and with the COVID keeping people away, I think they're going to struggle to make a profit, at least at the box office. Maybe if
Okay.
they can put it on
According
streaming too, then maybe that'll help.
according to a few websites, um, they neither Shang Chi nor I don't believe Eternals are going to be on Disney Plus. No, they're going to be theatrical only.
Yeah, and the
So.
interesting thing is that
Mhm.
there have been some hit movies this year, pretty successful, but they really haven't been comic book films, necessarily. You
Mhm.
had what that last Fast and the Furious film was a hit. Godzilla versus
Yeah.
Kong was a hit.
Yeah, I actually
Uh,
got to see that in theaters, really enjoyed it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, so did I. So I don't know. I think Spider-Man's going to be a hit. I
Oh,
think
yeah, most
that's
definitely.
got their if they're going to have Tobey Maguire in it and Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin and as we saw
Yeah,
Doctor
yeah,
Octopus is in it. I think
yeah.
that's going to really bring people in. So I think that'll be a hit. But I don't know. I think other comic book movies besides that, at least for the rest of this year, they may struggle at the box
Well, and
office.
here's well, and here's the thing too. We are kind of living in a different dynamic now in terms of looking at how successful films or stream or other series are in terms of the financials.
Right.
Because here's the thing: we always focus on the box office. Those of us that operate on YouTube or operate on in the internet sphere, we always look at the box office. But I think the big thing we're going to have to look at is that eventually Shang-Chi and the Eternals will go over to Disney Plus. It won't be a premiere access, but they will eventually show up there. Not to mention, granted, there is not as big of a turnaround time for when films are in theaters and then go to home video. Those are also factors that we're going to have to start taking into account. And you need to start watching websites like Amazon or eBay or whatever, or any place that sells DVDs or Blu-rays or 4K discs or whatever the case, because that right there is also going to be a revenue stream for these films and for these TV series.
Yeah. Well,
And
actually, I wonder about that because I know Warner
Mhm.
Brothers has said that they're going to start moving away from physical media and selling DVDs. And I suspect that
um,
they're not going to be the only ones who do that. And as they go forward, you're going
uh,
to start seeing less and less stuff being put on DVD or Blu-ray or what have you because they want to force you onto the streaming service so you can watch it there. And that's the only way you can see it, whether it's a movie or a show or whatever.
and there is their prospect for that to happen, but I think there's still going to be a market. And honestly, I think it's a bad move in terms of what DC or Warner Brothers is doing in terms of that.
I agree.
I think any studio that considers the prospect of doing away with physical media, it's a bad move. You're cutting a revenue stream off that can be very profitable for you. Because think about this: you can have a Blu-ray and a 4K edition of a movie, but then you can also have a Blu-ray and a 4K edition of a movie that's got extra features. And I mean, a
Right.
buttload of extra features, and that's what people, myself included, buy physical media for, is all that extra stuff because we want to know how'd you do it. Now,
Right.
I will say something that Disney Plus has done in terms of with the Mandalorian series with the gallery um mini series that they have done. those are good. Those are actually really good. I actually watched me and Mam Ambassador watched the one last night on the season 2 finale for Mandalorian, and they had interviews with Hamill and with Favreau and Filoni and a lot of other people that were discussing how they recreated Luke, about all the secrecy of keeping Luke's appearance off of the internet. And it was a good, I think it was like 45, it was a good 45-minute featurette or whatever you want to call it. And me and the missus, we were thoroughly engaged in it. I think I think honestly you can do both, because I would love for them eventually to release Mandalorian on physical media, and I would love for them to include not necessarily all of the special features like the gallery that they've done, but maybe the more important parts of the gallery that pertain to the episode, each episode specifically. And I think honestly, it is a big mistake for Warner Brothers, considering how cash poor they are right now, to consider cutting off a revenue stream. I
Right.
mean, you think about it. According to the financials, and I don't know how accurate everything is, Warner Brothers, they're kind of in a fix, so you might want to reconsider the whole doing away with maybe DVD, because DVD is kind of an outmoded format, but Blu-ray and 4K are still used by a lot of people. We have a 4K player and 4K TV, for heaven's sake. So a lot of people, if you're lucky and you can catch it on a sale, you can get a good 4K player and a 4K TV for under $1,000.
Well, I think that uh, it's going to be interesting to see if they can hold to that. If they
Mhm.
can really say, we're just not going to do it anymore. And if they try it and then maybe wind up going back on it later down the line. It's hard to know because, I mean, so many of the numbers with these streaming services, they don't make them public. So we don't know
Mhm.
how many subscribers they have, how many views or shows or movies getting. We only can kind of guess. They may tell us, but how do we know if their numbers are right or not?
Well, I think Disney has been fairly transparent with the number of subscribers and just how well their shows, their streaming series have been doing. Because here's the thing, that's all publicity for them. That's pushing
Right.
that's pushing forward this idea of, hey, we've got good stuff on this streaming series service, you all should consider getting it. I mean, here's the thing, in the next few years, and this is just a theory of mine, you're going to see maybe 3 or 4 streaming services, paid streaming services, really rise to the top. Disney Plus, Netflix is probably still going to be in the mix there. HBO Max, and I would probably say Amazon Prime, because Amazon's going to be bringing out their Lord of the Rings um, Second Age series in a couple of years, I think it is. So that's probably going to really catapult them in a lot of ways.
Well, I think that one thing we're definitely going to be seeing is if COVID goes on for a long time, in this,
Hmm.
like, in say in a year, we're still having this issue, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, we have to kind of start needing to reevaluate what success is for a movie because
Hmm.
under these conditions we have right now, movies aren't going to be making $1 billion. I just don't think it's feasible. And
Hmm.
that's going to necessitate smaller budgets, more
Yes.
modest budgets for movies.
Hmm.
But the thing is, for these big tentpole films, that's what drives people to the theaters is the spectacle, the big CGI,
Hmm.
uh, spectacles and all that. And if you have to lower the budgets, are you going to be able to make movies like that? And because I just, and particularly with younger viewers who have grown up with CGI and really
Hmm.
don't know what movies, didn't grow up watching movies without them, like say we did, are they going to
Hmm.
accept movies like that? Are they going to be wanting to go out and pluck down $15 to see a movie that costs a fraction of what these current films do, and that has only a fraction of the spectacle in it that current films do? And because I think audiences today are kind of spoiled, and I just don't know if they're going to cough up that kind of money for films if they're not having their expectations met in terms of what they're getting in the effects department.
And you know what? And I do see your argument there. Something I will bring up is you bring up the concept of the big temple film, and I do believe that is obviously is most definitely a thing within the entertainment industry. But I have something that I've also seen with the movie going public and various different fan bases or fandoms, if you prefer. We're also drawn to strong character driven stories. And if you don't have a bunch of special effects included in that, if the story and the characters are strong and relatable, people will go out and support these films and these streaming series. I mean, if you look at, say, just for instance, a movie like Joker or maybe even the Quiet Place films, and I haven't watched either one of them, but we have them both on Blu-ray. I still, again, it's something I need to sit down and watch. But if you think about those two films in particular with A Quiet Place, they are not effects heavy films. It's a lot of dialogue and character development and time with the characters and so on. But it was exceedingly profitable. And the true is also the same for A Quiet Place 2, because as I understand it, Quiet Place 2 is also very profitable.
Well, I haven't seen them myself.
Hmm.
I have heard, I've heard they're good, and you're right, they were
Yes.
successful. And that is, certainly I think horror films like that, there's a place for them. But
Hmm.
as far as character driven, all that, this is something I've been meaning to do a video on. But one of the things that frustrates me with movies now is so often is that honestly, they j-
Hmm.
the plots don't make a lot of sense, and it's something
Yeah.
I've been seeing for, I don't know. I mean, the first time I actually saw it in a real glaring way was that first Star Trek film back in or 2009 that Abrams did.
Oh,
But it
okay.
seems like since then, I mean, just so many of these films, the details of the plots don't make a lot of sense. I thought
Hmm.
Black Widow had that problem, and I strongly suspect. Again, I don't know this. This is just a theory I have that
Hmm.
Hollywood studios just don't really care about the plots that much anymore. And I suspect it's because they have some sort of internal analytics or something that tell them that people really don't pay attention at movies anymore. They're on their phones. And they're in the theater, they're on their phones, and then whenever there's they aren't really paying attention to the plot anyway, and then when there's an explosion or a big CGI battle or whatever, they look up and they watch for a few minutes, and then when it's over they go back to their phones again. And I think they feel they need that CGI spectacle to get people's attention and to get them into the theater. And that's why I think movies a lot of the time the plots are sloppy because in it's in the minds of the studios that people aren't paying attention anyway, so who cares?
I think there is some credence to your theory. I think it's a both and it's not an either or. Going to the theaters as frequently as I did growing up and going to the theaters now, the thing I notice, and I do sometimes, I do look around, most of the time, the theaters I'm in, the people are paying attention to the movie. Now there might be a certain percentage of people that probably don't pay attention to what they're seeing in the theater. They may be on their phone, or they're talking to their neighbor, or they're talking to whoever they came with, or whatever. But I think for the most part, people still go to the movies to go see the movie, not so much be on their phone. They might be on their phone during the previews or before the movie starts, but I think there. there might be a small minority of people that aren't as you describe them. They're just there. They don't pay attention to the movies. I think a lot of the movies, at least the ones I have seen, do make sense. And these are people who are trying to tell a well written and well performed, cohesive story. I mean, okay, let me break this down in terms of context that from something I just recently watched, and I'll bring up Cruella. This is quite literally a movie that should not have worked because if you think about it, who is Cruella Deville? She was the villain, and she's one of the lesser known villains from the early years of Disney Studios and Disney Animation in terms of 101 Dalmatians, which is
Right.
actually based on a book. But what they were able to do with this film is they were able to take this character and turn it on its head. Now this is an origin film and everything, kind of like it's kind of in the same vein of say the first Maleficent, if you ever saw that or not, the one with Angelina Jolie. And they told the story from a different perspective of Cruella's early life. And it takes place in the 1960s, the mid to late 1960s over in London in the West End. The story was crafted in a way to where it was relatable to everyone. The characters, while are extremely unorthodox, are also relatable. And it does have several beats in it that make you care about her, that make you care about Cruella. And just speaking for myself, there's a scene and mild spoilers for this because I don't know if you've had a chance to see it or not. Classic. I would recommend if it is something that you think you would enjoy, I would check it out, and I would just recommend just give it a try. I think you
I
might
don't
enjoy
have
it.
Disney Plus,
That's right,
so
you don't. Well, wait till it comes out on home video and then get it because I think you might enjoy it. But there's a scene in there, and like I said, this is mild spoilers. Cruella discovers the origin of where she comes from. And she has a very traumatic breakdown. And then for me, I mean, I was sold into the movie before that. But there's a moment in that film where she just absolutely breaks down. And she has some very harsh words for the woman that she regarded as her mother. She has some very harsh words for her. But at the same time, she says, I love you. And that for me was a very relatable moment because I experienced something similar in my own life. So I think there are cases, most definitely, of shoddy or poor storytelling and crafting of scripts. But I think there's also a very large demographic, or at least a moderately sized demographic of writers and storytellers that want to tell good stories and well crafted ones that are going to be engaging for an audience.
I think you have a higher opinion of Hollywood than I do.
Well, I
I'm
don't so
not so
much.
sure of that.
I don't necessarily have a higher opinion of Hollywood, but I have a higher opinion of certain individuals who want to tell good stories. And I believe there are a lot more people out there that want to tell good stories and who are going to these studios and say, "Hey, I have this idea for a movie or a TV show or a streaming series, and I want this opportunity to tell it." And I think there are still studios out there that are willing to give the unknown writer or director a chance. So I can understand where you're coming from, but I also have my own perspective. but I respect yours as well.
Okay, and Andrew, yeah, I see you there. So, whichever you want to do, if you want to join in, that's good. Thank you for stopping by. So, I think we covered that pretty well. One thing I wanted to talk about was the Dune movie. Are
Oh
you
yes,
looking forward to that?
yes. That is a most resounding and the most definite yes. When they first announced this a couple of years ago, I was like, finally, are we going to get a good, faithful adaptation of Herbert's work? And when the trailers started dropping and images started coming out, and I'll say this, it killed me when it got delayed. It did. It really killed me when it got delayed last year. I was like, the one movie I was really looking forward to, and you sons of bitches had to delay it. But
Have you?
yes, mhm.
Sorry, I was going to say, have you read the book?
Yes, from cover
Okay.
to cover. I don't own a copy, but I have read it from cover to cover, and I've actually read two of the follow-up books in the series that Herbert wrote, and also read several of the ones that his son and Kevin Anderson wrote that were prequels to the original Dune saga.
Right.
And there's actually a channel also that I follow, and this guy is the biggest Game of Thrones and Dune expert and fan that you will ever meet.
Is it Quinn's Ideas?
It is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
watch him from time to time. He's pretty good. He does. He makes good
He
videos.
he knows I say this with all respect. He knows his shit when it comes to this. When I want to know about Dune or Game of Thrones, he's my guy. He's the one. He's the channel I go to. But to give you a yes, I am very much looking forward to Dune coming out in October, and I'm hoping that it is successful enough that Warner Brothers will invest the money and the resources for at least the follow-up film. I know they're currently working on part two because they actually split the first book into two movies, which I think was a great idea.
Uh-huh.
But I'm hoping that we at least get through Heretics of Dune. I would at least like to see them go that far. We got further than we ever had when Sci-Fi did their two Dune miniseries with the first Dune and then Children of Dune, which is kind of a adaptation of let's see, um, Children of Dune and God, I think God Emperor of Dune, or at least part of God Emperor of
No,
Dune.
Dune was pretty much just Children of Dune,
Was
I believe.
it? Okay.
Well,
Okay.
actually, but or actually, it was so they did Dune and then they did Children of Dune, but the Children of Dune movie was actually kind of a combination of Heretics of Dune and Children of Dune,
Yes.
kind of those two together.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. That's it. I was thinking Heretics of Dune. So yeah, I would love to see them. I would, like I said, now if I was really swinging for the fences, I would say do everything do everything, including Chapter House. I would love to see him. I would love to see them finish Herbert's original saga.
Yeah, these would have to be really successful, I think, for them to
Oh, I
go that
know.
far.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um,
I know.
I'm pretty hopeful for it. I mean, visually,
Hmm.
it looks really good. The
Oh,
cast
it's
is really good. I do think that it is a good move that they're not trying to do the whole novel in one film. I think that was one of the things that kind of tripped up David Lynch's version. I actually thought it
yes.
would be good as a trilogy because if you look at it, it's really got a pretty clear three-act structure, and I thought it
Yeah.
could work if you split it into threes. But making it two movies is probably going to work fine too. I do think
Yeah.
that Villeneuve, he's a really good. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but I do think
You're as
that
close as anybody I've heard.
he is a very good director. I haven't seen all his movies, but Arrival was really good. I really
I've
enjoyed
heard
it,
that.
and I thought his Blade Runner sequel was really good.
Oh,
I do
I
think
re-
that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
just real quick. Just real quick. I just recently watched Blade Runner 2049 on our We have HBO Max. We have a subscription. It was great. It
Yeah,
was really really good. But anyway,
I
go ahead,
thought
Cliff.
he did a good job of kind of capturing the atmosphere. It's funny because in a way,
Mhm.
it's kind of a slow, kind of a somber film,
It's a
and kind
slow
of a
burn.
yeah, kind of a contemplative film. But that's what the first one is kind of like too. So I think it works.
Yes.
It makes it feel more like it's of a piece of the first film. Unfortunately, his box office track record is not great, and I don't know if he's a director who can really drive people into the theaters. So, I that concerns me.
Yeah, and I think that's a legitimate concern. It's one that bears credence to it. But I think Villeneuve has started to build or has built a fairly decent reputation as a director and as a creative. And I think that right there will be one of the big driving forces for this adaptation of Dune going forward. I mean, the trailers we've gotten, I will say this: the last one that we got had a little more humor in it than I expected, and it didn't. It came from a character that I didn't really see as all that jovial, but I think was appropriate, and that was, of course, Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho. I mean, we know who Jason Momoa is. We know what he's done in his career, and I was actually very impressed with the fact that he was cast for this. And I was also impressed with the fact that you've got Oscar Isaacs as Leto Atreides, you've got a relative unknown in Timothy Chalamet as Paul Atreides, you've got Zendaya as Chani, you've got um, Stellan Skarsgård as Baron Harkonnen, you've got Dave Bautista as Raban, one of the Baron's nephews. The interesting thing is that we have not seen the other nephew yet, and I'm wondering if maybe they're going to hold him back until part two, because both of the Harkonnen uh, brothers and everything, although technically they are brothers, but it's Vladimir Harkonnen's nephews. I wonder if maybe they're going to save Fade Routha for part two because he has more
Yeah,
of a
I've
part to play.
yeah, I've wondered about that. We haven't really seen him. So yeah, I think they'll probably save him for the second one,
Yeah.
because he hasn't appeared in any of the trailers yet.
Hmm.
It's funny because when they first announced Oscar Isaacs was being cast, I thought he'd be Duncan Idaho because I thought he kind of fit the description of the character really well in the
Hmm.
books. So I was a little surprised when he was Leto, and then they announced Momoa as Duncan. That's
Hmm.
interesting because if they were to kind of go on doing the books and do several of these books, they Duncan is really kind of the one constant in the series. I mean, he's
Yes.
basically, and he's the only one who's in it all the way from beginning to end in
Hmm.
every book in some form or another. So this could be, this could give Jason Momoa a lot of job security. But
True.
I do wonder, I like Jason Momoa. He's an enjoyable performer, but
Hmm.
I just don't know if he's going to be able to. He can't. I don't think he could carry the film and play this
Well,
role effectively, and also still deliver a performance that's true to the character in the books. Because the Duncan character is tricky. He's a tricky one to play,
is.
especially once you get into later books and he's this revived clone.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, Agola.
yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what if the series is successful enough to allow him to do that.
Well, and here's the other thing too. You don't necessarily have to allow Jason Momoa to carry this first film, or even if they do the subsequent books either, because you've got other characters in there that play more of a role than he does. He is, as you said, he is a reoccurring character throughout the Frank Herbert's original saga, and so on. The thing for me is, I want to see the dynamic of Paul and Jessica. That right there is going to be the most interesting dynamic for me, and also the dynamic of Paul and Chani, played by Zendaya. I honestly, I will not lie, I was surprised when Villeneuve cast her as Chani, but at the same time, she, at least from my point of view, she's proven herself as an actress. I mean, I know she's done other things, but just basing off of what I've seen her do in the two previous Spider-Man movies, Homecoming and Far From Home, she's got some decent acting chops. She has good ability as an actress. But those are the two relationships. Those are the two dynamics that I'm going to be most interested in, because they are honestly very central to the story of the first book. The other character, and this is a member of the Atreides house that I will be interested to see how he pulls this off, is Josh Brolin as Gurney Halleck. Because if you remember, in David Lynch's Dune, Patrick Stewart plays Gurney Halleck. Now, I will say that honestly, Stewart as Gurney Halleck, he was one of the highlights of that movie. Josh Brolin has got some big shoes to fill, but I think he's got the capacity to carry it off. I will say, I do like that little exchange that we see in the trailer when Leto says, "Gurney, smile," and Gurney's like, "I am smiling," and he's got just an absolute deadpan look on his face.
Right.
And there's that one exchange also in the trailer when he's talking to Paul, and he's like, "You don't know the Harkonnens. They're brutal. They're animals." Because the back history on Gurney Halleck, he lived on Giedi Prime. He saw how brutal the Harkonnens could be, and he has nothing but contempt. He has his own vendetta, his own reason for hating the Harkonnens as much as he does.
Right.
I mean, you see it in the ending of, or the climax of Lynch's Dune, when Gurney Halleck says, "Let me kill this Harkonnen animal for you, my lord." But Paul says, "No, he's mine. I'll do it." So
Yeah, Gurney was a slave, wasn't he? Wasn't he a slave to the
yes, he
Harkonnens?
was. He was a slave on Giedi Prime.
Yeah.
He was, well, essentially the biggest part of the population on Giedi Prime were enslaved to the Harkonnen house, because that's how their house functions. In the prequel books, House Atreides, House Harkonnen, and House Carino by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson, they actually talk about, they show Gurney on Giedi Prime before he escapes from the Harkonnens and
Right.
goes to Caladan to join the Atreides. So
Yeah,
his
I've read those prequel novels. Yeah, so I know what you're talking about.
okay, all right. So, but yeah, in terms of just the short answer, yeah, I will most definitely go check this out in theaters. Might get a few of my buddies to say, "Hey, let's go see Dune," because I've got some friends who are just, they're either really hardcore sci-fi fans, or they are just as hardcore Dune fans as I am. And yeah, I trust Villeneuve to pull this off. I mean, I've heard nothing but good things from all the work that he's done. I've never seen Arrival. It's probably one I need to sit down and watch at some point. But seeing just Blade Runner 2049, I'm thinking, yeah, this is the right guy for this job.
All right. Well, I think we covered that one pretty well. So, just one more thing I wanted to touch on in the stream, and I want to thank you again, Ambassador, for stopping by
Yeah,
and being a part
absolutely.
of it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, have you heard the rumors about how DC may be making Superman homosexual?
That I have not heard. No.
Okay.
No, I
So
had.
this is So do you know who? So anyway, word started circulating on the web. There were
Mhm.
rumors that they're going to make Superman gay. Now, this isn't Clark Kent, right? So this is actually his son, Jonathan Kent.
Mhm.
So they recently, just last month, they started a new Superman series, and Jonathan Kent, Clark's teenage son, is the main character. And this is the Superman they're talking about.
Is
And
this isn't Superman and Lois, is it?
well, it's sort of. I mean, in the Superman and Lois show, they do have a son named Jonathan. And by the way,
Mhm.
I put out my season review of Superman and Lois just a
Mhm.
little while, like just like a couple hours ago. So feel free to
Oh,
check
okay.
that out. But
Yeah, absolutely.
they
Yeah.
do have a son named Jonathan in that
Okay.
show. Uh,
Gotcha.
but
Okay.
they, but Superman, he's based off of the comic book character.
Mhm.
So when they
Yeah.
did, when they did the New 52 reboot, right? They
Mhm. Yeah, I
basically
remember.
they rebooted Superman. They started with a completely new Superman.
Mhm.
And then, so after about 4 years, now they got good initial sales, but then sales started tailing off. And so they did another sort of relaunch event called Rebirth. And in Rebirth,
Mhm.
they reestablished the pre 52 pre Flashpoint version of Superman, the one that's basically been in comics since the 80s. And
Mhm.
when he returned, that they established that he was off at like in another parallel universe or dimension or something. But anyway, when he returned, he and Lois, his Lois as well, when they returned, they now had a
Mhm.
teenage, or they had a young son named Jonathan, who
Mhm.
I think he was supposed to be like 8, something like that.
Mhm.
And they, and Jonathan was actually a pretty popular character, and they very quickly put him into a book called Super Sons that starred him and Damian Wayne, who is Bruce Wayne's son, who was about that
Yeah.
same age. So it was
Yeah.
basically like preteen Batman and Robin, and it was a pretty popular book. It actually was doing pretty well. But then about 2 years ago, they brought in a comic writer, Brian Michael Bendis, who had been at Marvel for a long time, and he had made a big
Mhm.
splash at Marvel. He was one of the top writers in the business, for better
Mhm.
or worse. And he took over the Superman books. And one of the first things he did was he did the storyline where Jor-El returned. Jor-El survived the explosion of Krypton, and I don't remember. I didn't read all the issues, so I don't know how he did it. So don't ask me
Mhm.
how. Basically, Jor-El returned, and then he wound up taking Jonathan, and they went off into some other timeline or dimension or something for reasons. I don't really know why. And when they
Mhm.
eventually returned, it had been many years for them that they had been gone, and now Jonathan was a teenager. And at the time, I thought, why are they doing this? Because the kid version of Jonathan was pretty popular. People liked it, readers liked it, so why change it? And I
Mhm.
suspect that we're now beginning to see the reason why. Uh, like I said, they've now recently started a new Superman book, and he is the star of Superman. Clark Kent is still the star in Action Comics, but they're doing the storyline, are going to be doing the storyline where he's going to go off into space for, I don't know, for an extended period of time, and he's not going to be on Earth. And basically, Jonathan is going to become Superman.
Mhm.
And they've pretty, I suspect that part of the reason they have aged Jonathan up is so that they can explore his sexuality. I think that's part of the
Mhm.
reason why. And it's, I just don't know. I don't think it's going to be a good idea for them in the long run. I think initially they're going to get, see a spike in sales because of all the hype.
Mhm.
But I think in the long run, they're going to wind up, losing readers, and it's going to be harmful for them in the long run because this isn't something they can just walk back very easily.
Mhm.
And I don't know why now a lot of people are saying that he is definitely gay, like he is. That's not necessarily so. I read the latest issue. If you go by what's in the latest issue, I didn't see anything in there that said yes, he is gay. Now they are definitely moving him the direction of him being a left-wing activist. They're definitely doing that.
Mhm.
And so I think it seems likely to me that that's the direction they're going, and they may get there eventually. But he's not confirmed gay yet. And
Mhm.
like I say, I think it's going to get them a spike of sales initially, but in the long run, they're gonna wind up probably seeing a real drop in sales, and it's going to hurt them.
Well, we live in a world where people like this exist. And I'm not saying that is by any means a bad thing. It's just a simple fact of life. We live in a world where homosexuals exist. I'm not saying that as a negative. I'm not saying I disapprove of that lifestyle. I'm obviously a straight white male, but if they're doing this for the right reasons to tell an interesting story, then I say by all means do it. But if they're doing it simply to pander and to quote unquote placate a certain demographic, and here's the thing, did anyone actually ask for a homosexual Superman? Not that I'm aware of. Now, if you want to do this, okay, sure, you have the artistic and creative license to do so. That is their right as creators. But the question that needs to be asked is, we can do with this thing, but should we? Because we're going to be not only that, you're going to be opening up a whole can of worms in terms of, you're going to have the hardcore fans out there, and you may even have just the casual fans out there go, wait just a damn minute, why are you making the son of Jonathan or the son of Cal and Lois gay? Did Jor-El do something to him, or is this a natural progression of the character? Now, if it's a natural progression of the character, then by all means, explore it, run with it, and see where it takes you. But the danger is, as you said, if this doesn't go over, they're going to have a very difficult time course correcting this. This is going to be a hard about face to make this right if it doesn't go over with the fans and with the readers.
Yeah, because if sales wind up really dropping badly, mm-hmm. and they want to try and course correct, I mean, they're going to get twice as much criticism for doing mm-hmm. that as the amount of praise they get for doing it in the first place. Now, I think that it's the thing. Now, speaking bluntly, would I mm-hmm. prefer that Superman be straight? Yes, I would. But it's like you say, there is a gay audience out there. I don't know how big they are, but I do think that it's an interesting that they made this choice with Jonathan, because again, when he was introduced, he was like an 8-year-old, 10-year-old kid, and they really hadn't established if he was straight or not. So there's no real prior history that you can point to say, well, he's straight, like you can, like for instance, recently they made Tim Drake, the third Robin, they made him gay, or well, he's quote unquote bisexual.
Yeah, I heard about that.
But you can bet money he'll never have a relationship with a female again. The people he's with from now on will be male. But there was possibly a previous track record of him having heterosexual relations. You don't have that with Jonathan. So I kind of feel like it the way I felt. It was when they made Doctor Who a female. When I heard they were doing that, I thought, well, this can work. But it's going to really come down to the writing. Is it going to be that they're just going to go, okay, it's a woman now, and then just go forward? Or is it going to be all about how this character's a woman, and basically is it going to become a show where they're hitting all these far left talking points? And that's exactly what it became. And I don't know that it will be that way with Superman being gay, but it certainly seems to be the direction they're trending in.
Well, and here's the big thing. how much demand is there going to be for this iteration of Superman? How many people are really going to be interested in reading a comic book series about a homosexual Superman? We simply don't know. We don't know the numbers. We don't know how much of a demand, if there is any demand at all, for something like this. All we know is the fact that DC is doing it. And if they're able to craft a story that explains why he now is gay, then okay, great. But you got to make it a good story, otherwise it's going to fall flat on its damn face. Now, I haven't had the chance to sit down and read comics on a regular basis in many, many, many years. But to the best of my knowledge, at least in the 90s, there were never, or very, very few, homosexual superhero characters or even villains, for heaven's sake. I mean, okay, the one thing that I've heard from a lot of people, and these are people that I do, whose opinion I do respect, have brought up the fact that they have made Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy a lesbian couple.
Yeah.
And to a lot of people, they have said they've made it work. And I say, okay, great. If you can make it work and make it to where it's intriguing and it's interesting and entertaining for your audience, okay, then fine. By all means, do it. But if they're just doing this to score some sort of votes or some sort of whatever with some higher ups in their studio or whatever the case, I'd say you need to go back to the drawing board, because you really need to consider what you're doing. You're taking the son or a son of Superman and Lois, turning him gay. Now, I'm not saying that isn't something that has never happened in the real world. Obviously, it has. Clearly, it has. But they're going to really have to stretch their writing chops to make this work. That's the big thing. And I'm just going to say this. Considering DC and Warner Brothers' track records with their superhero films, I would be remiss if I said I wasn't just a little bit hesitant. I'm not completely without faith that they have the potential to pull this off. But at the same time, I'm like, you sure this is really what you want to do with one of your most iconic characters, or a character that's connected to one of your most iconic characters? I'm just saying.
Right. And I do want to add now, he's not confirmed to
Mm-hmm.
be gay yet. I mean, in the latest issue, which just came out this week, he's
Mm-hmm.
not. There's nothing in there that indicates that he is gay. He is, but they are definitely pushing him in the direction of being basically kind of a left-wing activist type superhero. I will say that.
Okay.
Um, I think we covered that pretty well, and we're up at an hour and a half. So I think we can go ahead and call it there.
Okay.
And again, Ambassador, sir, I want to thank you for stopping by and spending this time with
Absolutely.
me, man. I appreciate it.
Hey,
And
anything for a friend.
thank you.
You're welcome.
And I had last week. You guys did a review of Third Space last week, wasn't
Yes,
it?
we did. Yeah, we
Yes.
did. Mm-hmm.
And I saw that, and like I thought about sending you a message and saying, "Hey, I'll come and jump in," but then I didn't do it. And
Mm-hmm.
then when Friday night came, and I remember I looked, and you guys were already a good way into it, and I thought, well, there's no use in jumping in now.
You should
Um,
have.
but again, I want to thank you. And
You're welcome.
I don't know how often I'm going to do live streams. I'm going to have to
Mm-hmm.
kind of get into the new semester in the fall and see
Yeah,
what my
I hear you.
schedule is like.
I was
Um,
there, dude. I know how hard it can be. Believe me, I understand.
right.
So,
But hopefully I will do more. But anyway, again, I want to thank you, sir, and I want to thank everyone who stopped by in the stream. And again, I want to thank everyone who has subbed to the channel and helped me get to this point. And I think we can go ahead and wrap it up there. I'll go ahead and sign off.